Longtime Republican U.S. Senator John Warner from Virginia passed away Tuesday. He died peacefully from heart failure at the age of 94. Warner served the Commonwealth as its senator for 30 years. Before becoming senator, he graduated from D.C.'s Wilson High School. He served in World War II and the Korean War and later served as Secretary of the Navy. And for 6 years, he was even married to Elizabeth Taylor. As a 5-term senator from Virginia, John Warner was a Republican, but a Virginian and a patriot first. President Biden, a Democrat, worked alongside Warner for 3 decades and said, quote, "The John Warner I knew was guided by 2 things, his conscience and our Constitution. And when acting in accordance with both, he neither wavered in his convictions nor was concerned with the consequences." That's something many of our current elected leaders could learn from. And Virginia Senator Mark Warner, of no relation, had this to say of his former rival and friend who he ran against 25 years ago.
I still, when I wrestle with an issue here, sometimes think, what would John Warner do? And if I follow what John Warner would do, I'm doing the right thing for the Commonwealth and for the country.
Hear me out. We lost a political giant Tuesday, one who represented the true embodiment of what it means to be a public servant, who was willing to compromise and work with people on both sides of the aisle for the sake of doing what's right and not what's politically convenient, qualities which are sorely lacking in many of our current elected leaders. May you rest in peace, Mr. Warner, and thank you for your service. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.